I'm Haley Taylor, and you're listening to the Rough Draft Diaries. It was a beautiful, warm, and sunny day as I headed outside for this Rough Draft Diaries interview. People seemed to be outside as well, riding their bikes, mowing the lawn, and visiting the cemetery. That last one may sound like an odd choice for a summer activity, but Larry Sloan doesn't think so.
The idea that historically, a history which I'm very familiar with of the rural cemeteries, is they were the first public parks. And so they were just at the edge of the city, and it was a cool place to go. You'd have the trees, and so you get in the carriage, you'd be at the last stop of the trolley line, and you would come out with the children, you'd fly kites, you'd have your picnic, and you'd spend your Sunday here. And grieving was part of that, but mostly it was a green space that was cool, and you're away from your house in the inner city.
It may sound odd, at least it did to me, heading to a cemetery to enjoy your lunch. But Larry, who's the director of cemeteries at Woodlawn Cemetery and Arboretum, where we're currently interviewing, assures me that this was the trend.
Woodlawn was established in 1876. It's very interesting that in the United States there was a movement of rural cemeteries, started with Mount Auburn in Cambridge, and Massachusetts was the first in 1837. And during that period, 1835 to 1880, is when these cemeteries were established, and most significant cemeteries in that time established a rural cemetery. Woodlawn is one of the last to be established in the United States. It is 160 acres, which is a relatively large green space, a tract of property. Woodlawn, dating to 1876, was one of the first park areas in the city. So it was a picnic area, and some of those things that were at the origins of Woodlawn are things we're trying to recreate today.
Recreating a woodlawn of the past involves three main areas of focus. That's the trees, the birds, and the history. Many industrial pioneers of Toledo are buried within the cemetery. Think names like Libby, Tidke's, Spitzer's. So naturally, many of the events at Woodlawn are history-based, like tombstone tours. But there's also tree tours. 800 different species of trees were planted on the grounds back in 1876. And if you have a variety of trees, you'll also have a variety of birds. So there are many birding events as well. There is one thing that Woodlawn does struggle with, and that's connecting the cemetery with the modern family.
Historically, the Smith family, or any other name, was a second-generation Toledo family. They got buried with their grandparents. And today, that's just not the case. People are not anchored to a city, to a community, to a neighborhood. And you've retired to Florida, and after 10 years in Florida, you're now a Floridian. You're no longer a Toledo. And so these are trends that we have to deal with. And so you're seeing a decline in families that have large lots here and utilizing them. And it's just, the idea is that cemeteries need to be relevant to the community. And in some ways, with the growth of cremation and the fractured family and people retiring to different communities, they've lost some of that. And we're trying to bring that back in a variety of ways, including tree programs and tours and just keeping Woodlawn to be relevant.
I'd never been to Woodlawn before, so I thought it was important to get a tour of the grounds as a part of the interview to really test if I could imagine myself taking my lunch near tombstones. Luckily, Patty, the foundation director, was free for a tour, and it was wonderful to see she was just as distracted as I was by the beauty of the trees and the greenery that surrounded us.
This tree here is look how big that is.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's a European birch tree.
Wow. Patty is in charge of organizing the events at Woodlawn. She's the one who gives the birding tours and the tree tours.
We talk about a tree a week, so I give like this little sticker. And then we send them what the tree a week is. And, so they're learning, and it's a community then. People meet other friends and wonder how they're doing if they're not there.
Oh, that's wonderful. At this point, Patty leads me to a bridge located almost behind the cemetery. She's pointing across the river to the Lucas County Civil War Monument, where 300 veterans of the Civil War are buried.
And that's where our Memorial Day celebration is. And it's just really touching because how you're in there, you're in with a story about the Civil War while you're in memorial and honoring those who served our country. It's really heartwarming, I guess.
Absolutely.
Plus, I get to hear from people that are coming to the events, and they really want to tell someone what they know.
Right.
And it's neat to see that enthusiasm in people.
When you're in Woodlawn, it doesn't feel like you're in Toledo. I don't know exactly how to describe it, unless you can actually see it. But it feels funny to drive through Central Avenue with businesses and neighborhoods surrounding you on the left and right, to enter into this little pocket of greenery filled with history. Larry believes this contrast is important to every city. And then once you have it, you need to try and keep it.
The green spaces in a city are critical to that city, to that resident who's living in otherwise an urban environment. And I think the parks, sometimes underrated by cities, they need more support from the city to bring a quality of life to the city, are very important. And I think Woodlawn can play a part in that. We're not the whole story. We're one piece of it. But we can be a part of it.
I'm Haley Taylor, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Rough Draft Diaries.